We have trial attorney Misty Marris with us, executive editor of Legal, Labor, and Politics at Deadline, Dominic Patton, joining us as well. Quick review for everybody. Anybody who's around then remembers the case but might forget some details. Let's put the timeline up just as a kind of a scene setter. If you go back to August of '89 when the parents of Lyle and Eric were killed, they were arrested in March after their kind of phony story that they went with at first didn't hold up, and then they faced two separate trials. If you remember, the juries deadlocked in both of those trials, so then they were retried together and convicted March of '96, sentenced life in prison without parole July of '96. So this is what we're now revisiting. Dominic, you first on, because like I was saying to Nancy, you get the new DA coming in. I guess that could be the change in all of this, as we look like we were headed towards some sort of a resentencing where they might, and we might still be headed that way, where maybe they would get out of jail pretty soon. What do you make of today?
Well, originally, Connor, there was talks, and you and I have talked about this in the past, as with Misty, there was talks of them getting out by Thanksgiving. That wasn't going to happen. Then there was talks of them perhaps getting out by Christmas. There was talks that's clearly not going to happen now. There was talks of the governor offering clemency, but Gavin Newsom said last week he wasn't going to do anything until the new DA came in. This has come down to both from the opening of this case by outgoing LA DA George Gascon, and now the way it's going to be dealt with by incoming DA Nathan Hochman. This is all about LA politics. A lot of people are looking at the Netflix series and the Peacock documentary that revealed some of this new evidence, and that has had a great public influence. But what's really happening here is out and out local politics, finding a way to cure this, finding a way to get to a solution on this. And let's be honest, the new DA does have a right to look over everything. He said he's looked at nothing so far. So this is going to take time. And what happened today at this hearing? The judge gave the new DA the breathing space he wanted.
Nathan Hochman, that new DA, who is there? You look at Gavin Newsom. Who's Nathan Hochman? Well, we could put it up. He's the incoming DA who's known as kind of a moderate prosecutor, but he ran as a tough-on-crime prosecutor. That's what he talked about throughout the campaign, defeating George Gascon as more progressive. He's the guy who recommended the resentencing and pledged to review the case. So now you have Hochman coming in, Misty, to review this new evidence that led to this habeas motion that we've been talking about. What is the new evidence? Well, the letter that Eric had sent to a relative, right, December '88, 8 months before the killing, that appeared to, there's part of the letter, back up these claims that the father had been abusive. That's what he wrote about. And also this declaration from a man now who was a member of the boy band Menudo years ago and said that Jose Menendez raped him in the '80s, '84, I believe, when he was a teenager. So where do we go from here, Misty?
So they say that this evidence corroborates the Menendez brothers' argument that they were sexually abused and that sexual abuse was the reason for the killing. So it's important to understand just procedurally where all of this stands. And as Dominic said, Nathan Hochman, with respect to the resentencing hearing and the recommendation of Gascon, he said, the timing is the air of impropriety. So I don't take office till December 2nd, and I want to review everything, not just my office. I want to review it all personally to make a recommendation on the resentencing. That's one component. That's one avenue being pursued by the Menendez brothers, which is a standard of not only taking into account that newly discovered evidence, but also was there abuse that occurred that should be part of this? Was justice already served? Was their sentence proportionate to other similarly situated incarcerated individuals? So there's a different argument. Then, Connell, the habeas petition, two separate things. Right. The habeas petition, a much higher legal standard that any new evidence, if it's considered new evidence, that's the first legal question. Second legal question, if it had been presented in the courtroom, would it have changed the outcome of the trial? Very difficult standard. The better course is this resentencing proceeding for the Menendez brothers, and some of that is going to depend on Hochman's recommendation, what happens in that courtroom at the upcoming hearing.
As remember back to the campaign, we had a few headlines out of it at the time, Dominic, that Hochman was basically saying when he was running that Gascon was trying to get attention or something like that, right, with this case. So, I guess you can see it from his side that, from what he said publicly at least, that he wants to review it. I mean, that's fair. But that was basically the accusation, right, that was floating around during the campaign, that Gascon was trying to looking for attention with the resentencing.
I wouldn't even say it was floating around, my friend. I mean, in the county DA debate, Hochman out and out said it to him. Like, look, you've had this on your plate for over a year, almost a year, this new evidence. It's been out there. You've done nothing. Suddenly, in the middle of an election campaign where Gascon obviously was defeated, but was way behind, and always media savvy, George Gascon, thought that this could, maybe get him in the news, get him some points. There were press conferences where he said he was going to review and then look and then this and that. It was that there, like, this is politics. You're playing politics. And this is what happens, especially in the second biggest city, in the most powerful country in the world. But this is playing off the attention that's come from the Peacock documentary and the Netflix series, and now a new Netflix documentary. It's playing off that into the politics. What happened today with the judge, I would say, was actually a very certain.
Hey, Dominic, let me step on you. The attorney, Mark Garagos, coming out. He was pointing to the cameras. He wanted to go over by the microphones and say something about this. So he's waiting for the photographers to get set. And we'll make some comments, it looks like, here about what transpired today and possibly what he's looking for in the future in terms of the Menendez resentencing. Misty and Dominic are still with us. We'll watch this, see maybe if Garagos comes back. But, Joan Vandermolen's 93rd birthday, that's Kitty's sister, and Terry, the aunt from New Jersey's Jose's sister, right before they left, both of them said something briefly. Did you hear that Misty saying something to the effect of, 35 years is a long time. But they were allowed to. So Misty, they testified today, right? What's the legality behind that? They testified today. Then the resentencing hearing comes at the end of January. So what
so they testified today due to their elderly age because the sentencing has been punted. And what we heard Mark Garagos just say is that first they asked the judge to take over jurisdiction of, it sounds like, both of the resentencing and the habeas corpus petition, which the judge said yes. And there's going to be a fulsome hearing. What's a fulsome hearing? Well, it's where the Board of Paroles gives input as to whether or not incarcerated individuals should be eligible for release. That's going to be a part of this resentencing as well. Even if they were eligible for release, the parole board would still have the opportunity to speak on it. So it sounds like all of that is going to be happening at the end of January, as opposed to that being two separate proceedings of the court and then the Board of Paroles. Now, why is that important to getting that testimony on the books? One of the factors that the Board of Paroles takes into consideration is rehabilitation, whether or not somebody is a threat to society. So the testimony by these individuals that are family members was going to be pretty critical to making that argument and to fulfilling those obligations under the legal standards that the Board of Paroles is going to consider.
What about that as a final thought then, Dominic, on all of this? You look at the older pictures of Lyle and Eric. In reading about, they've been in jail for 35 years, and reading about some that I know they both, they got college degrees. They were supposedly working with other people in jail. I guess that could help them if it comes down to that type of thing in the end. I don't know.
Well, I mean, to some degree, yes, of course, my friend. But of course, there's also been, as was put in some of the documents that were filed about their rehabilitation, there's also been instances where, for instance, one of the siblings had a cell phone that he wasn't supposed to have behind bars. I think a lot of this is there's an impetus to movement, I think, happening here. Yes, as Missy says, punted to January, but a lot's going to happen in January. We're going to kind of get the lay of the land around this. And of course, I would say, too, what's interesting here is while we've seen the dynamic between the documentaries and the television shows about the Menendez brothers and the law here, the law has kind of put the brakes on a little bit and said, we're going to determine this in a reasonable time with a reasonable manner, give a little breathing space, what I think became a quite hyperventilated issue around this. So I think we're going to see this slow down a little bit. Maybe it's going to become a little bit like what the trials were like in the 90s, for those of us old enough to remember. First trial got a ton of attention. Second trial, not so much.
Yeah, that one wasn't on TV. I don't think the first one was, right? So then the second one, they had different rules, and they were tried together the second time around. Yeah, it was different then, and we'll see how it goes now. Dominic, thank you. Misty as well. We'll revisit this, and we have much more ahead here.